Welcome to Holiday, where we sit over fresh baked challah on Friday afternoons here at my table or my desk. My name is Tammy Priest. I'm a Jewish follower of Jesus, and it's great to be with you as we take another look at intersections between the old and new. I do have to say that today has been a very special holiday because a dear friend is in town, and Wendy and I and Rhonda spent hours together talking about old times and about our families and about Jesus and the Torah and Jerusalem and the church. We covered a lot of ground, which is why I've kind of lost my voice. But now that it's quiet, again, I was reflecting on our conversations, and it brought to mind a verse that was in my daily scripture readings this week. It's always been one of my favorite verses because it hung on my grandparents' wall in Brooklyn when I was young. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. Let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I remember thee not, if I set not Jerusalem above my chiefest joy. Now, I've shared before about biblical remembering and forgetting, about it being an action word, not just a thinking word, and that remembering is to take notice of something and then take action on it. So I won't rehash all that here, except to say that zachor, the Hebrew word for remember, doesn't just mean to recall something, it's to take notice and then take action. But what does it mean here to not forget Jerusalem? Well, Psalm 137 was written during the exile in Babylon, and God's people have been carried away from the promised land, and Jerusalem is lying in rubble. So in one sense, not forgetting Jerusalem means that even though the exiles have been dragged across the desert to Babylon, they will not forget where they came from. They will remember the beauty of Mount Zion and not give up on returning. But in a deeper sense, I think it's not just about Jerusalem, the city, but about the one who dwelled there. The glory of God dwelled in the Jerusalem temple. His presence rested there, right in the middle of his people. And so to not forget Jerusalem is to not forget Adonai. To remember Jerusalem is to remember God. To not only think about him though, but to act on that reflection. To let that remembrance fuel their lives, the exiles' lives, and our lives in faithfulness. So the psalmist is saying that if they don't act on their understanding of God, he should make their right hand the symbol of strength, too weak to do anything. That if they don't keep speaking of God's truth and goodness and power and mercy, they shouldn't have the ability to say anything. Their tongues should just cleave to the roofs of their mouths, rendering them silent. They understood that the treasure of Jerusalem wasn't the city, it wasn't the temple, it was the one who dwelled there. Even if all those structures were destroyed, the people would keep on remembering and rejoicing in the God of angel armies, who was still on his throne in the heavens, even if the earthly temple was in ruins. They would keep trusting that God would take action, remembering them just as they were remembering him. On this side of the cross, we can see this remembering in an even deeper way, because when the time was full, as scripture puts it, God's precious thoughts about humanity, people he has lovingly crafted and breathed his own life breath into, those thoughts led him to action in a singular moment in history. It was an action he had promised was coming and that would change everything. The Messiah arrived in our midst, walking our dust and breathing our air. And on the cross, he took on the weight of all humanity's brokenness, all of our exile, all of our sorrow, all of our own self-inflicted wreckage too, so that we would never have to be exiled from God's presence again, no matter where we are. And he accomplished it in Jerusalem. So when I think about Psalm 137, remembering Jerusalem is not only about rejoicing in God above all other joys, but it's remembering and rejoicing and being propelled forward by what God did in Jerusalem that day to remember and rescue us all. So this afternoon, this Shabbat Eve, I pray that we would be so amazed and overcome with what the Messiah did in Jerusalem, that his mercy and grace and indwelling spirit would be our chiefest joy, and that in our rejoicing and remembering, we would act and speak with the hands and the words of Yeshua, Jesus, every single day, no matter where we are. And yes, on this holiday. Shabbat Shalom.